Okay, people. So I got to go to the Barbican today, right? And see this new film. It is called Cold, right? It is written and directed by couple Claire Coach and Lisle Turner. I feel I'm not sure if it's pronounced Lizzle, but yeah, he did say it on the day, but yeah, I can't remember the pronunciation. But yes, they wrote and directed. Um, Turner also produces along with Alison King, associate production from Kelly Bray. Johnny Pilcher handled the music. Dominic Bartel, cinematography. Fleur Atkinson edits the piece, while Cole Davis was on production design as well as costume design, hair and makeup, prosthetics, all of that jazz. We've got Laura Moss and Eva Jean Wright. Okay, so our cast, um, Janet Etuk is Balder, and Jacob Meadows is Ulf, with Claire Cooch as the Hex Doctor. Now, Balder and Ulf aren't their real names. When we first meet them, they're not the names, but I cannot remember what because it's not listed, and I can't remember what the names of their characters' original names are. Um, the gist of the film is this: after a routine antenatal appointment, a 30 something couple find themselves transported to a terrifying frozen forest in which they are unable to speak, forced to shelter in a remote cabin, hunted by ferocious wild beasts, and desperate to find their way home. They are forced to confront the brutal truth about themselves, each other, and the future of their unborn child. So, yeah, that's the gist. Now, this is based on real life experiences. Obviously, Claire and Lizelle weren't transported to a frozen forest, but they have an experience of this kind of situation, right? So, yeah, I'll read something from the press release, right? So, Claire and Lizelle um, aim to amplify the conversation around this still taboo subject that continues to affect so many people with their beautiful filmed um, dark fairy tale. And the topic is uh, child loss, right? Their heartbreaking experience, first losing a baby boy to a terminal genetic condition, and then losing another in a miscarriage with near fatal blood loss for Claire, meant they would no longer be able to have children. As February's new government initiative to offer grieving parents baby loss certificates indicates, the issue affects millions of families. When Cooch and Turner discovered 1 in 4 pregnancies do not reach full term, it prompted them to co-write and co-direct Cold. The film is dedicated to their baby sons, Bodie and Brooke, who came from who came but could not stay. Based on their experience and those of 12 other bereaved parents, Cold is a dark fairy tale for adults, following a couple who attend an antenatal appointment before being mysteriously transported to a bleak frozen forest, lost in the freezing woods, unable to speak. Um, you know all of that bit. Cold began life as a play developed at Bristol Old Vic and Barbican Pit. When COVID prevented its live performance, funding from Arts Council England enabled Open Sky to reimagine it as a feature film. Cold was filmed on the main stage of Courtyard, Hartford in March 2021. Open Sky combined theoretical rehearsals, practical stage effects, and theoretical production design with world-class cinematography and post-production techniques. This unique approach created an award-winning feature film in only 2 weeks of filming. Open Sky also produced an interactive website, um, Forest of the Lost, where visitors could hear or read the testimonies that inspired the film and also tell their own stories of baby loss. As recognized digital pioneers, Open Sky were made an Arts Council England national portfolio organization in 2023. So, yeah, there you have it, right? So, as I said, it's based on this real experience, you know, like Claire is from a theater background, right? She's a physical theater director and performer, and Lisle is a playwright and filmmaker, right? So they know how to tell stories, right? So they, merge together to bring this. Now they did there was a little talk after the film, and they talked about, using the vehicle of a fairy tale, right? Because they wanted to try and tell this in a different way to how we normally see people dealing with the loss of babies. And so, they remember the old, like, grim fairy tales, which no happy endings, right? The old grim fairy tales and, you know, Hans Christian Andersen and all of those things, they're pretty dark. The original virgins, right? They were pretty dark, but with this moral in this lesson. So they wanted to kind of use that, and that's how Cold came. And I will say they did. I feel they nailed the aesthetic of this kind of fairy tale. It's very interesting what we have here, right? Now, I will say, right, the beginning, when they're in the hospital, right, this couple, it it did feel like they were the couple are talking to an audience, right? It didn't necessarily feel like an actual couple talking, right? It didn't feel like a free flowing natural conversation. It felt like we are watching people perform. And it's not to say that the actors involved were bad or anything like that, but it just had this different kind of feel to it. Now, once we go to our frozen wasteland, that's when everything changed, right? And I really like the transition effect that we had from, hospital to, like, frozen tundra. That was, yeah, I like that. I thought that was really good. And the other thing with this frozen tundra, they can't talk, right? It's like they've got stuff stuck in their throats, right? And I wasn't quite sure if they coughed up teeth at some point, right? But you kind of get the feeling that the things stuck are the emotions, right? Are the words to be able to describe how they are actually feeling, which is interesting, because I think we all have that, so there's certain things that you find it hard to talk about. And being able to kind of visualize that is very interesting, right? And I think people will be able to, you know, understand, what I mean? Find that connective tissue in that. And especially with something like this, there's how many times have people actually told you, you know, they've had a miscarriage? And chances are, a lot of the people you know have had a miscarriage, right? Chances are they didn't even know they had a miscarriage. That's all the craziness of this thing, right? Sometimes people don't know. Sometimes people, you know, women might just think it's a heavy period, right? People just don't know. Sometimes it's not even a heavy, right? It just all depends on your body, right? So we have all of these things, you know, it's a difficult subject to talk about. So the fact that they're kind of choking on these words, that's interesting. But I think now we can't talk. It all becomes very physical, right? They have to express everything via facial expressions and body motions. And that there's a skill in that. There is a definite skill in doing that. And Etuk and Meadows, they really sold it. They really did sell that whole situation. So we see this, and I think what accompanies these great performances is Johnny Pilcher's score. Now, you know, scores can irritate me, and not so much scores, but this mood music. And Pilcher doesn't necessarily, it's not really a mood music, but he creates an atmosphere. He creates this themic atmosphere that really draws you in, along with the visuals, along with the performance. It's this soundscape, right? Because it's music, it's the sound of like wolves, it's the sound of pots, of footprints, and just all of these different things that bring this setting, this frozen setting to life. And there's a such a skill in that. And Pilcher really hit it with aplomb, really did. So we have all of this. So we have these experiences, and we're looking, and it's just like, oh, you know what I mean? It's a powerful thing, right? And we have these different kind of moments where both Falda and Ulf are experiencing pain, right? And this solo pain is like them, you know, exuding grief, right? Trying to get that, expel that grief out of their body. And it is so visceral, right? That you just, hits you, hits you. And, you know, it's dealing with this loss of babies, right? Not knowing what to do, which is just, it's a hard thing to see. It's a hard thing to see. But I mean, obviously, we're not seeing anything grim. I remember there was a show called Bodies on BBC. I think it was on BBC Three back in the day. And I remember turning on an episode, and a woman's giving birth, and her uterus prolapses. That's a sight, people, right? That's a sight. Fortunately, we do not get that, right? We don't get that. But the way in which they visualize the notion of child loss is very interesting. It's very interesting. You know, I do think our couple probably need to know how to lock a door, right? Probably need to know how to lock a door. You know what I mean? But yeah, like watching this whole thing, it's it is definitely impactful. It definitely leaves you thinking. Definitely leaves you thinking. And boy, that's a good thing. That's a powerful thing. That's something not all films will do. Right? Sometimes and it's not to say the film isn't good, right? You can walk out of a film and think, yeah, that was fun. That was really good. And that's the last you'll think of that film. But sometimes these things just stick with you. And cold is one of those films. Cold is one of those films. Now, you might be thinking, how can I see it? Right? Well, hmm, interestingly enough, the good folks behind this film are putting it on their Facebook and YouTube channel for free. So from this Friday, right, the 26th of April, you can watch the film. Right, so I'll put the links on the website. So yeah, go over to I think it's the Open Sky website and YouTube, and you will be able to immerse yourself in cold. I'll also put a link to the Forest of the Lost. So, you know what I mean? If you've experienced this, you know people that have experienced this loss, like you might find that a helpful resource, and you might want to share your story. So all of that will be there, along with the socials and all of that kind of thing. So go follow, go watch, go support, and check out Cold.